Are you maybe searching for a practice that, truly matters? For knowledge that really cuts through all the noise out there.
Hmm.
We often hear about doing good deeds, performing rituals, seeking wisdom, but what really makes the difference? Like, according to some pretty ancient wisdom.
Yeah, right.
Today, we're going to dive into some ancient texts, specifically stories that revolve around the Buddha's, brilliant disciple, Sariputta, to find some maybe surprising answers.
Yeah, they really are surprising sometimes.
Our mission, let's say, in this deep dive is to unpack these narratives and figure out what they tell you is the maybe actual path to progress. We'll contrast the sort of conventional ideas with a perspective that might just flip what you thought you knew about merit and realization.
That's right. And these stories, they're drawn from the Dhammapada commentary, illustrating verses attributed to the Buddha.
Right.
They're not just, historical footnotes.
Yeah.
No, they offer really profound insights into the nature of value, effort, attainment from a worldview that's pretty different from many modern ones, I'd say.
Okay, let's dig in. So the sources lay out a series of encounters Sariputta had. The first one starts with his own uncle.
Right. Sariputta goes to visit him.
And the uncle, he's clearly quite proud of his religious practice, right?
Definitely. He tells Sariputta he gives 1,000 pieces of wealth every single month.
Wow, 1,000 pieces of wealth monthly.
Oh.
That's a serious commitment of resources.
It really is.
And who's he giving it to?
He directs this significant monthly donation to the Naganthas.
The Naganthas.
Yeah, who were followers of Jainism at that time.
Okay. And what's driving this? Like, what's the goal behind such consistent, large-scale generosity?
He's very clear about it. He explicitly states he's doing this aspiring to reach the Brahma world.
Okay.
And he says, look, this is the instruction I got from my own teachers, which was, a pretty common goal in many traditions back then.
Right. Makes sense. So we've got this long-term, costly, regular practice rooted in his tradition, aimed squarely at a high heavenly rebirth. Seems perfectly conventional, you could say. Then Sariputta steps in and facilitates a meeting between his uncle and the Buddha.
Exactly. And the Buddha hears about this, extensive practice, and then he presents this really striking contrast.
Okay.
He compares the uncle's long-term, large-scale giving to the Naganthas with something, much smaller, almost negligible in comparison.
Like what?
Like the value of even a brief moment of interaction or offering to one of the Buddha's own disciples. But, and this is key, performed with a joyful mind.
A joyful mind.
Yes. The sources mention something as simple as just looking upon one of the Buddha's disciples with that joyful mind, or maybe giving even a ladleful of alms to them. Tiny acts.
Okay, here's where it gets really thought-provoking, I think. The Buddha offers a specific comparison in a verse, right? From the source material.
He does. It says that giving thousands monthly for 100 years in sacrifice to the general populace, which sounds a lot like what the uncle was doing, right?
Exactly.
That is surpassed by honoring one developed person for even a moment.
Surpassed. Just like that.
Yes, the text is quite explicit. Honoring such a person, even fleetingly, is stated as better, excellent, supreme, compared to that whole century of extensive giving to the general populace. The value isn't even close.
Wow. And who exactly is this developed person the source is talking about?
Good question. The source explains that a developed person here means someone who has actually attained stages of realization on the Buddhist path. So anyone from a stream enterer all the way up to an arahant.
Someone who's seen the fundamental truth for themselves?
Precisely.
Incredible. So 100 years of giving thousands doesn't stack up against a single moment honoring someone who is realized. So what was the immediate impact then? What happened when the Buddha shared this perspective?
Well, the source says right at the end of that discourse, the uncle attained the fruit of stream entry.
Just like that.
Just like that. And the text also notes that many others who were present were also awakened to the path, attaining stream entry or other fruits.
A direct transformative result just from hearing this different value system. Now, that was about giving wealth. What about other kinds of conventional practice? The source gives us another example with Sariputta, but this time it's his nephew.
Right. Similar setup. Sariputta visits his nephew, asks about his practice, much like he did with the uncle.
And what's the nephew devoted to? Is it also generosity?
No, something different. He says that every month he sacrifices one domesticated animal and serves the fire.
Okay, monthly animal sacrifice and fire worship. Again, seems like a dedicated practice, maybe a bit shocking to our modern ears, but traditional.
Very much so. And his motivation.
Let me guess. the Brahma world.
Exactly the same aspiration as the uncle. He believes this is the path to the Brahma world, because that's what his teachers instructed him.
So again, following teachers' instructions for a high rebirth, but this time involving a practice that includes, well, violence and ritual.
Yes. And Sariputta introduces his nephew to the Buddha as well.
And the Buddha draws a similar stark comparison.
Just as stark. He contrasts the nephew's potentially century-long practice of serving the fire. The text mentions doing this in the forest, maybe implying a kind of ascetic pursuit.
Right.
He contrasts that with the immense value of reverence towards one of the Buddha's disciples.
And the verse comparison here, is it as direct?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It leaves no room for ambiguity. It says, even if a person, any living being, serves the fire in the forest for 100 years, honoring one developed person for just one moment surpasses that entire century of fire worship.
Wow! Surpasses it again.
And the source explicitly states that the 100 years of fire worship does not reach even a moment's reverence towards the Buddha's disciple. It simply doesn't compare in terms of, spiritual fruit.
That really drives the message home, doesn't it? About what holds genuine spiritual value and the outcome for the nephew. Same as the uncle.
Just like the uncle. The nephew attained the fruit of stream entry right there at the end of the discourse, along with, again, many others present.
Fascinating. So whether it's giving vast wealth for 100 years or performing fire rituals and animal sacrifices for 100 years, both aimed at a high realm, neither compares to a single moment of honoring a realized person.
That seems to be the core message of these two stories.
Okay, let's turn to the third story. Also facilitated by Sariputta, this one concerns his friend.
Right. Sariputta visits his friend, who is, surprise, surprise, also engaged in significant religious practice.
What's his friend doing? More giving, more fire.
He's performing what the source calls yaga sacrifices. And the text specifically notes that, at that time, these were done with great expenditure.
Okay, so another costly practice deeply embedded in traditional rituals.
Very much so.
And Sariputta arranges for his friend to meet the Buddha, too.
He does. And the Buddha, following the pattern, contrasts this expensive long-term sacrifice. The source implies it's like a year-long effort.
A full year.
Yeah, contrast that with the merit generated by simply bowing to his disciples, who are referred to here as upright ones. And again, the key is doing it with a joyful mind.
Still bowing. And the comparison from the verse this time?
It's quite precise. It says whatever sacrifice or offering uses two terms, yita and huta, whatever a person makes in the world for a whole year, intent on merit.
Uh-huh.
All that is not worth a fourth part compared to the merit of reverence towards upright ones.
Not even fourth part. Not even a quarter of the value.
That's what it says. A year of costly, dedicated, merit-focused rituals doesn't even equal a quarter of the merit generated by a simple act of reverence towards these upright ones.
Okay, we should probably clarify those terms. What are yiha and huta exactly?
Lors helps us out there. Yitha is described as giving that's mostly connected with things like auspicious ceremonies.
Okay.
And huta refers to prepared guest offerings, but also, interestingly, giving that's done specifically with faith in karma and its results. So intentional merit-making.
Got it. And the upright ones, are they the same group as the developed persons from the other stories?
Essentially, yes. The commentary defines upright ones here as those who have gone straight, meaning they're on the path of realization again, from stream enterers up to arahants.
And the act of bowing, is it just, the physical motion? Or is there more to it?
Well, the source clarifies it's bowing the body, yes, but specifically done with a joyful mind.
There's that joyful mind again.
Exactly. And crucially, it emphasizes that the resulting kusalasatana, the skillful volition, the intention behind the act, that's what generates the significant spiritual fruit. The internal state is paramount.
That's definitely a key theme emerging here. And the outcome for the friend after hearing this teaching?
Predictably, perhaps, but still remarkably, the friend also attained the fruit of stream entry at the end of the discourse, as did the text notes many others present.
Okay, so stepping back from these first three stories, wow, we see this really clear pattern. Three different individuals, all Brahmins, deeply involved in their traditional practices, giving wealth, animal sacrifice, fire worship, expensive rituals, often costly, lengthy, sometimes even violent, and all aimed at achieving high realms, like the Brahma world, based on what their teachers told them.
Yep, following the conventional path as they understood it.
And in each case, Sariputta brings them to the Buddha, who then presents this radical, almost counterintuitive scale of spiritual value.
Exactly. The Buddha's teaching consistently points to the immense spiritual potency, the incredible value of even a small or brief act of reverence or skillful interaction, as long as it's directed towards those who have genuinely realized the path.
His disciples, the developed selves, the upright ones.
Right. And the surprising element really is how little value these traditional, long-standing, often very demanding merit-making practices seem to hold in comparison.
Yeah, it's like the sheer scale or the cost or just following the tradition that isn't the primary factor determining the spiritual fruitfulness.
The text strongly suggests, I think, that the object of one's devotion or meritorious action matters hugely. Directing that action towards those who embody genuine realization seems to have a transformative power far beyond just general giving or ritual performed without that specific focus. And as we saw very clearly with the bowing example, the state of mind accompanying the action, that joyful, clear intention, generating skillful volition, that's equally critical, maybe even more so.
So true fruitfulness seems to be rooted in connecting with and importantly valuing genuine realization in others. But this makes me wonder, what about our own realization? Where does that fit in?
Absolutely, that's a perfect transition. It brings us to the fourth story, which kind of shifts the focus. It moves from these external actions towards an internal state of realization, specifically involving Sāriputta himself.
Ah, okay. So this story involves Sāriputta and a group of monks.
Yes, a group of forest-dwelling monks who had come to visit the Buddha. And the source tells us the Buddha knew these particular monks were actually ready for arahantship, the highest stage of realization.
Okay, so they're ripe for enlightenment.
Exactly. So the Buddha turns to Sāriputta, his chief disciple in wisdom, and asks him a question that, well, on the surface, seems designed maybe to test his faith.
What does he ask?
He asks Sāriputta, do you believe? And the word used is sarahati, related to faith or belief. Do you believe that cultivating the 5 spiritual faculties leads to the deathless, to nibbana?
Okay, a fundamental teaching. And Sāriputta's reply, you said it was remarkable and shocking.
It really is. And initially, yes, quite shocking. He doesn't just say, yes, venerable sir. He states clearly, venerable sir, I do not believe this based on faith in the Blessed One, meaning based on the Buddha's word.
Wait, hold on. He's saying he doesn't believe the Buddha's word on such a core teaching. How did the other monks react to that?
Exactly, you can imagine. The monks present were utterly taken aback. They thought Sāriputta was expressing some kind of wrong view, maybe that he lacked faith in the Buddha or the path itself. Big misunderstanding.
So what was the nuance there? What did Sāriputta actually mean by saying he didn't believe it based on the Buddha's faith?
He immediately clarifies, thankfully. He explains that he doesn't believe it based on others' faith or words because he himself knows it directly. He says, I know it, I have heard it, seen it, understood it, realized it, and experienced it through wisdom. Then he contrasts his position with others who haven't personally realized this truth. They, he says, might indeed need to believe it based on someone else's faith, like the Buddha's faith or testimony.
Okay. That makes much more sense. So his unbelief isn't a rejection of the truth itself or even of the Buddha's authority in general. It's a statement that for this specific truth, that cultivating these faculties leads to the deathless Siritis, he's moved beyond needing external belief because he has verified it directly within himself.
Precisely. It's a profound statement about the nature of realization. And the Buddha confirms this understanding immediately. He explains to the monks essentially, don't misunderstand Sāriputta. He clarifies that Sāriputta isn't lacking faith in the results of karma or in the Buddha's awakened qualities. His use of the term unbelieving asado in Pali in this specific context means he doesn't rely on others' words for qualities or truths he has personally realized.
It's like the difference between believing a map is accurate because someone trustworthy gave it to you and knowing the path because you've actually walked it yourself.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
Exactly that. And this leads beautifully into a description in the source, a verse actually, about what makes a supreme person.
Okay.
Yes, a verse is shared that describes this person who embodies true supremacy, not through external status or ritual, but through internal attainment. And that person is described using 5 key qualities, starting with this unique sense of being unbelieving asado.
Right, the term that caused the confusion. What are the others?
They also know the uncreated, akatanyo, are a breaker of connections, santicedo, have destroyed opportunities, tavakaso, and have spit out desires, fantaso.
Okay, let's break down these specific terms, crucially as the source itself explains them. First, asado, unbelieving.
Right. The source's explanation is key here. Asado means not believing based on others' words regarding qualities that one has realized oneself. It's about direct knowledge superseding belief for that specific realized truth.
Okay, makes sense in context now. Next, akatanyu, knowing the uncreated.
This specifically means knowing nibbana, realizing nibbana. The uncreated, the unconditioned, which is outside the realm of compounded phenomena, is nibbana. So they know nibbana directly.
Got it. Sindacheto, breaker of connections. What connection is broken?
This means they have broken the connection to the cycle of samsara, the endless cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, driven by karma and ignorance. That chain is severed.
Okay. Hatavakaso, destroyed opportunities. Opportunities for what?
Opportunities for future rebirth. The source explains that the opportunity for any future becoming, any future life in samsara, is destroyed because the very seed of karma that leads to new becoming has been eliminated at its root.
Wow. Okay. And finally, Vanteso, spit out desires.
This means all hopes, all aspirations, all desires that are linked to the cycle of becoming, to future existence in any realm, are eliminated or, poetically, spit out. Why? Because the task of traversing the paths to full realization is complete. The work is done. Nothing more to desire within that cycle.
So the source's definition of a truly supreme person, it's not someone who performs the grandest rituals or holds the strongest secondhand beliefs. It's someone who has directly realized nibbana, broken the cycle of suffering, eliminated the potential for any future rebirth, and is utterly free from desires because they've completed the ultimate task of liberation.
Exactly. It's the ultimate pivot, you could say, from focusing solely on external actions, however well-intentioned, to the paramount importance of internal realization.
And the outcome of this discourse, where the Buddha clarified Sāriputta's state and described the supreme person for the benefit of those forest monks.
Well, remember, the Buddha knew they were ready.
Right.
The 30 forest-dwelling monks, for whom this teaching was especially pertinent, attained arahantship right then and there. They realized nibbana for themselves.
Incredible. So connecting all these threads now from all four stories, we see this powerful and maybe, challenging picture emerging from these ancient sources.
Definitely.
The first set of stories, with the uncle, nephew, and friend, really highlights the efficacy, the power of reverence directed with a joyful mind towards those who actually embody the path. And it contrasts that starkly with these large-scale conventional rituals aimed mostly at future rewards.
Yes, it really underlines that the spiritual potency of an action isn't necessarily tied to its size or its cost or how long you do it or even its adherence to tradition, but it's profoundly connected to its object, that connection with genuine attainment in others and, of course, the intention behind it.
And then the fourth story, with Sāriputta, brings it full circle. It emphasizes that while skillful actions and reverence towards the realized can be really powerful conditions for progress, they can create the right internal and external environment, maybe.
Right. Supportive conditions.
The ultimate goal, the pinnacle, is personal realization. It's achieving a knowledge so profound that it transcends the need to simply believe based on anyone else's word, even the Buddha's word, for that specific, verified truth.
It's this interplay, isn't it? The path might begin, for many, with cultivating the right external attitudes and actions, like that skillful reverence we talked about. That helps purify the mind, gather momentum, maybe build faith in the possibility. But the true attainment, the real transformative power these texts point towards, lies in the direct knowledge, knowing the uncreated, as the verse put it. That direct seeing changes the mind fundamentally, moving beyond just performing rituals or holding beliefs without that crucial personal insight.
This deep dive into these stories about Sāriputta and the Buddha, it really challenges our maybe conventional notions of merit, of spiritual progress, doesn't it?
It absolutely does.
It suggests that the real power isn't just in the visible act, the thing you do, but maybe more so in the invisible drivers. The state of your mind when you do it, the object you're focusing on, and ultimately your own deep understanding, your own realization.
Yeah, these texts really push us, I think, to consider what we're truly cultivating with our efforts. Were we just going through motions based on tradition or what others have told us? Or are we consciously directing our energy towards what genuinely fosters wisdom and leads towards that possibility of direct realization? What does that actually look like in your own life?
Hmm. So, a final thought for you, the listener. What does it mean for you to perhaps shift from believing based primarily on others' words to knowing based on your own direct experience, especially when it comes to fundamental truth about yourself and the world? How does this ancient perspective challenge the way we often think about accumulating merit or seeking knowledge in our modern world? And maybe what steps could you take to truly cultivate that developed self these texts hold in such high regard, the self that has verified truth for itself?